It's true.
All right. Here we go.
Is NBC Palm Springs.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sarah Sanchez.
And I'm Gino Lamont. Topping the news tonight, a historic decision from the Supreme Court. LGBTQ people are now protected from discrimination in the workplace. And today, the family of another man killed by police pleads for justice just 3 weeks after the death of George Floyd. Meanwhile, more businesses are back open today, but the case counts continue to soar across the U.S. and here in Riverside County. And we're starting with that landmark ruling from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, the justices decide a key provision of that 1964 Act, which bars discrimination based on sex. It now covers sexual orientation and transgender status. The ruling protects LGBTQ people from job discrimination and allows LGBT people to sue for workplace bias. And for more on that historic decision, a huge victory for gay and transgender rights, we turn to Susan McGinnis.
A historic victory for the LGBTQ community. The Supreme Court rules employers cannot discriminate against workers based on sexual orientation or gender status. In a surprising 6-3 ruling, the court's liberal wing, backed up by two conservatives, including Chief Justice John Roberts. Trump appointee Neil Gorsuch wrote the decision, saying the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which makes sexual discrimination illegal, also covers sexual and gender orientation. Some legal experts suggest the ruling is even more important than the legalization of same-sex marriage. It makes federal what is now a patchwork of state law.
26 states, you can be fired for being LGBT until today's decision. Now, all of that is swept aside.
The High Court's three other conservatives issuing a blistering dissent, accusing the majority of legislating and not making judicial decisions. The ruling, a very personal victory for Gerald Bostock, fired from his Atlanta job after joining a gay softball team, and Amy Stevens of Michigan, fired from a funeral home after revealing her gender identity.
Their cases went to the Supreme Court and they have changed case law for every LGBTQI person who will follow them. And that's amazing.
The High Court relying on an old law to provide new protections to millions of Americans. Susan McGinnis, NBC News, Washington.
Folks in Palm Springs and across the Coachella Valley, from activists to council members, are celebrating today's Supreme Court decision. Our Olivia Sandusky shares their reaction.
Walking across America.
Almost a decade ago, Richard Noble marched from coast to coast, promoting the need for LGBTQ civil rights. This week, the Supreme Court ruled those rights are now protected by federal law.
It was the greatest day of my life. I am thrilled that I the Constitution finally spoke to me and to my people.
As an activist and resident of Palm Springs, Noble says he's inspired by his local city council.
We have the most far-reaching non-discrimination ordinance of any city in the country. So we've been a leader on this, and having the Supreme Court validate people's lives in the way they did sends a message to the country.
Mayor Kors says this was a big win for the transgender community as well.
It's the first time, I believe, in the history of our country that the Supreme Court has referred to a transgender woman with the proper pronouns. It recognizes transgender people as who they are.
And medical professionals in Palm Springs are also celebrating the decision after observing the impact of discrimination on community health.
We see it in our mental health program. We see it in people's desire to take care of their own primary care needs. This will help us be more successful at our mission and help people embrace self-care.
But local leaders say the fight isn't over.
This needs to spread out to housing and public accommodation. We still need to work to pass the Equality Act so the legislation is clear that it covers people in all parts of their lives. No one should be discriminated against because of who they are or who they love.
Olivia Sandusky, NBC Palm Springs.
All right, joining us now is NBC Palm Springs political analyst Hank Plant. Hank, thanks for being here on what is a huge day, certainly. First, I commented to you earlier today, I was surprised by this ruling because I thought this was already standard law. Why was I surprised by this, do you think? And do you think people were surprised that this wasn't already the law?
Oh, well, because you're right. It was the law in California. There were 21 states. There are 21 states where this is already the law. But that means more than half the country, gay and lesbian people could be fired just for being gay and lesbian. And so this really codifies it for the entire nation, Gino. In California, we passed a law in 2003 that codified these protections.
Right. And talking about the breakdown, this wasn't a 5-4 based on, what Democrat or Republican president picked these judges. This was a 6-3 win with Gorsuch in the majority. Tell me about the 6-3 breakdown.
Well, not only that, but Chief Justice John Roberts assigned Gorsuch to write the majority opinion. That's up to the chief, in a case like this. Gorsuch, of course, the first, we thought, conservative appointee of President Trump. And I think that Roberts wanted to send a message that conservatives are on board the fight supporting gay rights. And Gorsuch, classic conservative, wanted, I think, to send the message, if you read what he wrote, that this is, when you think about it, the true conservative position, which is the state should stay out of your bedroom and should support you so that you have equal rights.
Yeah, let's talk about equal rights, because this decision stems back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Tell me about that.
I think what we're seeing with this ruling is the intersection of the Black Lives Matter movement, which has dominated our consciousness and the news, and Gay Pride Month. Because this does, Gino, as you say, go back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which was written and passed to protect African Americans and women. And now you have the Supreme Court saying it also protects gays and lesbians. Who would have thought in 1964 that that would be interpreted this way? But here we are.
All right. Hank Plant, NBC Palm Springs political analyst. Thank you, sir. We'll see you at 6 o'clock.
An all Black Lives Matter march makes its way through Los Angeles in place of what was supposed to be the annual Pride Parade. Thousands of people gathered on the Walk of Fame and marched west to demand justice for people of color while also honoring gay pride. But just after the sun went down, workers washed away that mural dedicated to the Black LGBTQ community in Los Angeles. Using power washers, city workers erased all Black Lives Matter from Hollywood Boulevard. It's not known why city workers removed the mural. Let's check in now with Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett. He's got a look at your AccuWeather forecast after just a beautiful weekend. Mike, a lot of people I've been talking to say, hey, this is really nice for June. And I didn't even think about it until I realized, yeah, it actually is. Are we below normal for this time of year? Because we're enjoying it.
Sarah, one of the sentiments I heard a lot this weekend was, I wish we could just keep this for the rest of the summer. Yeah, me too. Temperatures were either at or slightly below average through the entire weekend. It was gorgeous out there, lots of blue sky. A couple things going on. We've got a weak low pressure system that's well off towards our northwest that over the next 24 hours is going to swing a frontal boundary. Look at that. You can literally see this very weak boundary that will slide across Southern California, and it's going to keep temperatures right in in that temperate range for at least a couple more days. In fact, 101, 102 is the norm for this time of year. We're currently 101 at Palm Springs International. That was our high temperature today, so we were 1 degree below average. We'll talk more about that coming up in the full forecast, but all you need to know is for the next couple of days, we're going to have a weak eddy off the coast that'll keep them foggy, cloudy. We're going to stay temperate, but it will be gusty as this frontal boundary swings over. It's been a bit on the gusty side today, but coming in from the southeast, so you're seeing a lot of dust in the atmosphere today. That will settle and switch around to the northwest a little bit later tonight. Not expecting it to get too gusty, up to about 10-15 miles an hour. 101 currently at Palm Springs International. Humidity at 15%. That's about 3 times what it was going into the weekend. So things looking really, really good. Next 3 days brought to you by Comfort Air. Confirm that. 101, 101, 102. Slight warming going into the weekend, but nothing we can't handle. Fantastic forecast coming up.
The coronavirus pandemic grows deadlier tonight. The U.S. death toll surpassing 116,000, with 18 states reporting a rise in new cases. And taking a look at our local COVID-19 numbers, 795 new cases were reported county-wide, 258 of those from our valley, bringing our total to over 2,900. Now, keep in mind, these numbers from today are numbers since Friday, as the county has stopped reporting on weekends. 1 new death was also reported in the county that was not from the Coachella Valley. The city-by-city breakdown of cases, Indio has the most now with 759. Palm Desert has the most deaths at 27.
Well, just like most businesses, the Living Desert Zoo has been hit hard during this pandemic. They've lost millions of dollars and had to lay off 2/3 of their staff, but those animals still had to be fed and taken care of. Our Daytona Everett's live at the zoo as they reopen today for the first time. Daytona, good afternoon.
Hey, Gino. Yes, I'm in the admissions area, and as you can see, it's a little slow right now. It's actually closed down, but there's definitely some changes in the area. They're promoting social distancing. They're telling people where to go. Lots of changes, but one thing that hasn't changed is taking care of these animals. Just like you and me, it was a shelter-at-home order for all the animals inside the walls of the Living Desert Zoo. Despite a $3.5 million revenue loss and massive staff layoffs, the livelihood of the animals was an essential service.
No, even though we were shut down and had some financial difficulties, we were able to dip into our bank accounts and borrow money, and we're able to keep all of our animals here. We didn't have any need to send any animals elsewhere. We really have a commitment to our 450 or so animal ambassadors that live here at the Living Desert to see and look after all of their needs.
And during the pandemic period, there's actually been a few additions to the zoo family.
So we've had several bighorn lambs that have been born up on the Bighorn Hill. There's 3 little piglets in there that are super duper cute. And then we even had a Speaks gazelle, which is a very critically endangered species from sub-Saharan Africa.
There's also a never-before-seen addition to the zoo itself. It's called Australian Adventures. It's a unique experience that takes you to the land down under without having to travel far. The Living Desert is now open and ready for customers with some slight modifications, including one-way paths, a face mask requirement, and pre-sale tickets. No need to stand in line anymore. For safety, some of the smaller buildings are closed, and so is the petting zoo until further notice.
We are really blessed to see the outpouring of support, donations small and large over the last 2 or 3 months that have helped us keep our animal care up and providing for all the things that we need here to keep the park going strong.
Now, like we said, there are some altered hours. They're open daily from 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. You can find that information and more information, like buying your tickets, online at NBCPalmSprings.com. Reporting live from Palm Desert and Daytona Everett.
All right, thank you, Daytona. Augustine Casino in Coachella opens its doors today. All guests will have their temperatures checked before entering. Everyone must wear a mask. Table games have been removed from the floor and replaced with additional slot machines, and smoking is now prohibited.
The city of Palm Desert will remove those colorful pedestrian crosswalks and bike racks along El Paseo. They're part of what was nearly $1 million project to make the area more pedestrian friendly. So why is the city pulling the plug on such a costly investment, spending another $250,000 to take it all down? Kitty Alvarado live on El Paseo with more. Kitty, good evening.
That's right, Gino. Well, these ultimately proved to be really unpopular. Take a look behind me. They're really colorful, but people around here say they don't like them at all. my goodness.
All right, that was Kitty Alvarado there for a brief visit. She'll have more coming up tonight at 6 o'clock about the removal of all those fancy sidewalks and bike racks they just put in a couple of months ago.
Coming up at 6:30, we continue our coverage on coronavirus in the Coachella Valley. Facts, not fear. Coming up at 6:30, we're going to be talking with Heather Vicona, the CEO of Lift to Rise. Sorry, I forgot the name. It escaped me for a second. Lift to Rise is going to be talking about the new rental assistance and how it's going to be rolled out and how it could help you. That's coming up at 6:30.
All right, it's Monday. We're just getting rolling here. Calls to intensify investigations in Palmdale and Victorville after 2 black men were found hanging in 2 California cities. We'll have more on that investigation. Plus, the family of another man killed by police pleading for justice tonight. While the latest from Atlanta, 3 days after Rashard Brooks was shot in the back.
Plus, new developments on when President Trump is expected to release his own police reform bill. Stay with us.
When we welcome our West Coast viewers, the threat to reinstate some of those coronavirus restrictions as the nation struggles with social distancing. Also, we continue our look at inequality in America and why home ownership remains elusive for so many black families on Nightly News.
Calls are growing louder for investigations into the hanging deaths of 2 African-American men. Robert Fuller's body was found in a tree in Palmdale during the early morning hours of June 10th. Today, LA County officials say an autopsy has been conducted and the cause of death has been deferred pending further investigation and a toxicology test.
What would have led us to believe that the death might have been a suicide at the beginning was more the lack of any evidence that there was any foul play at the time. That's about all I can say.
Investigators are looking into the death of Malcolm Harsh as well, who was found hanging in Victorville on May 31st.
The family of Rayshard Brooks wants justice. Brooks was shot in the back, killed by Atlanta police. A coroner's report determined the cause of death was homicide. Police were called after he fell asleep behind the wheel in a Wendy's drive-thru. Video shows officers trying to arrest him after a failed sobriety test. Brooks resists, ultimately wrestling away an officer's taser. And on the run, he turns and appears to point the taser at police. Officer Garrett Rolfe shoots.
Not only are we hurt, we are angry. When does it stop?
Say his name!
How many more protests will it take to ensure that the next victim isn't your cousin, your brother, your uncle, your nephew, your friend, or your companion?
Now, the officer was fired. The second officer on the scene is on administrative duty. Atlanta's police chief quickly resigned. In just the last 10 days, 19 police officers in Atlanta have resigned.
Sources say President Trump will sign an executive order that would establish a national certification system and set up a database to track excessive use of force by police officers nationwide. It would also include a national ban on chokeholds, but that is not expected to be in the order.
We'll be right back after the break. Mike has a look at our forecast. Mike.
Sarah, gorgeous live look for you, courtesy of our Walter Clark cam. Nothing but blue sky out there, tracking a really good looking week. Details when we return. Welcome back. Gorgeous live look for you, courtesy of our Agua Caliente Casino cam pointing towards the mouth of the Banning Pass. You're going to be seeing more of this over the next couple of days. Tuesday through Wednesday, looks like a little eddy will whip up off the coast there and keep that cloud cover at the mouth of the pass, not here in the Coachella Valley. Another gorgeous live look. Sunset tonight will be spectacular, but there is a good deal of particulate matter in the air. We've had some kind of gusty winds coming in from the southeast today. That makes that northwesterly switch a bit later tonight. We'll talk about that in a moment. The big story, temperatures 1 degree below average today. 102 is the 30-year average for today's date. 101 is what we achieved at the airport. 72 puts us 1 degree over the 30-year average in the overnight hours, but still pretty darn nice out there. And it looks like we'll get to hold on to that for a couple more days, courtesy of that eddy we were just talking about. It's not bad at the coast right now. 74 in LA, 70 in San Diego. They had some cloud cover this morning that mixed up and out beautifully, so they've got some sunshine in their neck of the woods. 104 in Phoenix right now. That appears to be our warm spot. Triple digits in Vegas, and the same happening in Yuma. All the watches and warnings across the west all have to do with warmth and wind, low humidity. Everything you see in red there is a red flag warning that stretches all the way across the Intermountain West, Colorado, Utah, into parts of Arizona as well. There is some snow expected up in Montana. They could get up to about 7 inches above 7,500 feet there, so winter not done with them yet. Here's what we're tracking is that frontal boundary that'll swing through here dry. It will bring no rain even along the coast, but we will pick up winds on Tuesday night. Currently, we've got kind of that easterly flow already switching around to the north at Palm Springs International and in Palm Desert, seeing still kind of a westerly flow coming up in the mountains. It gets up to about 15 miles an hour tonight. The big story will be on Tuesday when we'll see those winds gusting up to 40, 50 miles an hour in the Banning Pass and up to about 25, 30 miles an hour for the areas in purple here. Everything you see in blue will be about 10 to 20 miles an hour. It will be calm again on Wednesday. Current temperatures right now, delightful. Some low triple digits to the south, some double digits to the north, 96 in Desert Hot Springs, some upper 80s in the Yucca Valley, and 70 in Big Bear. It's going to be decent cooling tonight. We'll be in the mid 80s by the time we get to midnight. Tomorrow, we're going to see more of the same, mid 70s to start you off and some low 100s. Dew points will be slightly higher this week, but we're talking about 15% humidity max. 101 in Palm Springs, 104 in Indio, and we get to hang on to it this week. High pressure builds next weekend that warms us slightly, but still, we keep it under 110, and that's good.
Many of us are using a lot of hand sanitizer, but a new study from the CDC suggests we're probably doing it all wrong. Rubbing in hand sanitizer for at least 30 seconds kills COVID-19. Anything less can leave traces of the virus. We'll be right back. 6.